Okay, here we are again for the second episode with all the stuff in between podcast about a YouTube show about one person's perspective with living with muscular dystrophy. As I mentioned in the other episode, if we discuss medical information, it's not a substitute for information from a medical professional. So if there's any medical advice or discussion, please consult with a doctor or medical professional first. So, here we are once again with Alana, who's helping me host the show. How are you, Alana?
I'm very well. How are you today?
Excellent. Glad to have you back with us. We had some good responses. We had about 20 views since we published the first episode and good feedback. So, today's episode we're going to talk about the health issues relating to my type of muscular dystrophy. Other forms of muscular dystrophy affect those who have it very differently, even though it's within the broad category of muscular dystrophy. So I have a condition called Bethlehem Ulrich collagen 6 muscular dystrophy, and we're going to talk about the health issues and the rare issues that affect me and those like me with this particular form of it. And Alana's going to help me go through it, and we're going to discuss it. So I'm going to turn it over to now Alana. Thanks.
Yeah, so I'll be the soundboard. So I think maybe for people to understand the use of collagen and the development. So there are 3 genes, correct?
Yes.
That usually result in this type of muscular dystrophy.
Yes.
And a mutation on the gene, either a dominant or recessive, though I believe recessive is very less frequently.
I have autosomal recessive.
Okay. And that means that the 2 parents did not show there are no symptoms in parents.
Yes.
And it's a recessive gene that then is shown in a child.
Yes.
Versus if you had a parent who was affected, that would be a dominant, and then a child who's affected.
Yes.
So, something of interest would be that these genes develop the types of collagen, and the collagen results in how our connective tissue and the stability of connective tissue
Yes.
around the muscle, right? They call it the matrix. A different type of matrix.
Not the movie.
Not the movie, but in a way it is the space between where the development of these structures stabilize the cell, if that's correct. And then this is what either creates muscle stability over time, or the muscle stability degrades over time if there's a mutation with that cell, with the matrix keeping the cells in structure.
Yes.
Cool. So, if there's a mutation on one, it's usually one of the 3 types of genes. This will lead to a sort of dysfunctional production, and that leads to a degradation in muscle tone. Because one of the main symptoms, right, is muscle weakness, and I believe like flexibility, right, of joints.
Oh, definitely.
Over time. So that's just to give a background of generally what's happening and how this presents itself, though it's very rare. I believe your type is it's like 0.77 in 100,000
Yes.
people. So it's very, very rare, which also I think makes it fly under the radar a little more, just to help people understand life. And so for you over time, when you were a kid, how was this presenting, and were there certain risk factors when you were a child that you had to deal with in relationship to this?
Yes, when I was born, I was extremely weak, and the doctors felt that because of my weakness and lack of responses to stimuli, that I might have had Down syndrome, because they didn't know what time I had a biopsy. I was inconclusive, and that was not the case. I had high intelligence, which a test showed, but with a flaccid muscle tone and a tendency to drool and to be very lethargic, letting them believe I had Down syndrome when I did not. So I did have, when I was younger, I was more prone to becoming sick with respiratory infections, falling, and because of the muscle problem, the development of, in comparison to people who don't have a disability, it takes a lot longer. Like, more people start to walk on 2 feet first. So it took me longer to walk on 2 feet, so I was falling more often. And it took me a longer time to develop the strength to walk on 2 feet. And one of the things I was pointing out was I was told I might have some difficulties with math because I wasn't playing with objects like balls or looking at, let's say, blocks like with squares that children play with. So I missed out on that spatial ability that you learn. So I'm more proficient with creative things than math. I've learned to become better at math, but that development affected my ability to understand math when I was in school.
Like spatial, like playing
Yes.
with things physically,
Yes.
spatial awareness. Wow. Wow. And then, so respiratory risks are a through line I've seen with muscular dystrophy because of the structural support to the lungs.
Yes.
Is that a risk for you?
It's a big risk because with the lack of muscle tone in my torso and my back, I developed scoliosis. And the way scoliosis developed in me was to affect the structure and the size of my lungs because the back presses against the lungs and the spine, and the lack of muscle tone and muscles in my entire torso prevented me from developing that V shape that helps develop a full-size lung. So I have what's called restrictive lung disease, which is not a disease that affects the bronchial tubes, but the actual shape and size of the lungs.
Wow. Does it, is there like any limitation in capacity because
Yes.
of this? Okay.
So it's like about 40%.
Wow. And so then walking, things like
You
this?
know, walking and
Yeah.
doing more strenuous exercise, I have to take more breaks.
Right.
Or I get winded faster than someone else. If I walk, let's say, a few blocks, I have to take a short break, sit down, and then regain my energy, and then start again.
Wow. Are there any techniques that you use to help regulate breathing and
Yes.
that you find helpful?
I'm going to pulmonary therapy. It's a new thing I'm doing, and there's a technique called pursed lip breathing, where you breathe through you inhale through your nostrils and breathe slowly out, your exhale out, but with pursed lips. And that helps manage shortness of breath because I tend to breathe shallowly, and I have to get into that habit. I'm learning it as I walk, and I noticed and I was told that it won't be an overnight improvement, but the shortness of breath won't be manageable, not curable.
Wow.
You know, I'll have fewer incidents of shortness of breath, but I'll still always have it.
Right. And
Yeah.
also, like, when we breathe shallowly, this also can contribute to dealing with anxiety, things like this.
Yes. And as the CO2 builds up in the blood.
In the blood, that's right.
Yes.
And like the long exhales and the practice of this. Is this something that's a recent development or something that's been going on for years?
It started, I would say, when I was in junior high school is when the scoliosis developed, because of that growth phase when my back started growing and I started growing and the muscles were not capable of supporting the growth of the spine.
Mm-hmm.
That's when pulmonary deficiency started developing.
And you had to start therapy then, or
The therapy is just recent, because at the time I had to wear a full torso brace 23 hours a day,
Wow.
and then take it off to shower and bathe. And then once the back stabilized, I got rid of the brace. I didn't need the brace. So that was probably my sophomore year in college.
Wow. And getting in and out of a brace, things like this, it was only you, or you had help, or?
I learned how to do it on my own. It's like a plastic brace with pads on the inside and straps.
Wow. And how many years, you'd say?
That was probably about 8 years.
8 years?
From about 13, 14 to about 20.
Wow. And then once the development of the spine stabilized, you could live without it?
Yes.
Was it weird at first?
Yeah, it was like I felt a lot lighter, and it was just much better. So,
Wow.
it was a big weight off my shoulders.
Yeah. And then for the other risks inside this, like because of the stability of the muscles, muscle weakness, falling
Yes.
day to day?
Because this type of muscular dystrophy affects all my muscles, and it affects my ankles, and so the strength of my ankles. So, and my foot drops. So I tend to have random twists in the ankles, and I have had an issue with random falls, which have improved since I have a service dog and I'm doing physical therapy. I'm more mindful about where I step. And I for long walks I've been given an AFO brace for each leg to help stabilize the legs.
And what's an EFO brace?
It's a brace that goes from, let's say, my lower thigh to the ankle, and I put a shoe over it, and it helps prevent the ankle from rolling each way. But I use it sparingly because the doctors don't want me to use it all the time because it affects the muscles.
Yeah.
It causes the muscles to atrophy. So for specific instances where I have to walk a lot, I need to use it.
And are you balancing, like, strengthening your muscle tone?
Yes.
You go to the gym a lot, I've noticed.
And yes, I go to the gym, and that's for more respiratory and then for blood flow because
Right.
my muscles tend to lock up, and so I help that. And then physical therapy works on stability and balance.
Right. So, and this is something you probably have to be cognizant of all the time, that you can't, do you feel like you have to be going to the gym a certain amount of time per week to make sure
Yes.
that the muscles stay fluid, or?
Fluid, yes. So I was advised to do about 5 to 7 days a week.
Wow.
So about 150 hours.
150 hours.
Oh, wait, 150 minutes, I think. So 30 minutes a day. So 5 days a week. That
Wow. And how long have you kept that pattern up for the gym?
probably since last year.
And over time, do you feel the difference between when you were a teenager to now? You are an older gentleman.
Yes.
In maintaining your muscle tone and maintaining yourself day to day?
I would say when I was younger, I had more stamina, but my overall stamina has gotten slowly worse. Because my form of muscular dystrophy does not progress as rapidly, it's not as drastic as other forms, but it does progress slowly over time. So whatever I'm doing now, pulmonary therapy, physical therapy, and exercise on my own now, is to help slow its progression and manage it.
Right. And there are different forms, right? There's mild to severe in this type of Ulrich.
Mine, in this range, I would say it's milder in comparison to things like Duchenne muscular dystrophy, spinal muscular dystrophy, because those forms, people with those forms experience a rapid decline,
Okay.
and they end up in wheelchairs, and they need ventilator support pretty much every 24 hours a day.
Wow. Are there any other risks you want people to be aware of for your
Yes,
type? Yeah.
definitely. That's a good point. And what I'm saying is not a form of medical advice, but it's something that the National Institute of Health and the Muscular Dystrophy Association doctors who I've seen in the past had made me warned me about. And so from them, it pointed out that if I ever need general anesthesia, there are two categories of anesthetics for general anesthesia: volatile and non-volatile.
Mm.
Volatile anesthetics can be very fatal. It cause kidney damage, heart failure, and those forms are administered orally through a mask.
Mm.
So the non-volatile anesthetics are safer for people with muscular dystrophy. These other forms can cause kidney failure and hypothermia.
Mm.
So the non-volatile anesthetics are safer for people with muscular dystrophy with those conditions have. And it's been advised to only use them intravenously, not through a mask or
Inhaling. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. This is illuminating.
Yes.
Yeah, and as you say, can doctors give you a good perspective of what that means, that it will progress over time, that there is an inevitability of this, and how you process what that means for yourself?
Yes, because doctors say that I'll live a normal lifespan, but I'll have these respiratory and physical challenges that might get worse, and it's a matter of managing it through whatever I can do, like physical therapy, and to be aware of early onset of respiratory infections, and these other people with respiratory infections are advised to wait, let's say a week, to take antibiotics, but with my condition, I need to treat the respiratory illness, let's say in the first 2 days, with antibiotics.
Yeah.
Because with my particular situation, I get bacterial infections faster than other people. So if I aggressively deal with it in consultation with my doctor, I can prevent or reduce the likelihood of pneumonia.
Right.
So if I take antibiotics early, I see improvement and I can avoid going to the hospital.
Right.
Yes.
So I feel like lungs, though, are a central focus.
That's the big issue. And so there's some talk about gene therapy and stem cell therapy, but those are experimental things that have not, for my particular condition, there are not a lot of, down the road there might be some hope for drugs or gene therapy to help slow it down. Maybe not reverse it, but slow it down. Because other people with other forms of muscular dystrophy, they take special steroids and medications. And it's a trade-off for them, because they might slow the progression down, but then steroids, from what the medical literature shows, can weaken somebody's bone structure, bone density, and create weight gain.
Right.
So,
which would be very risky for
Yes.
somebody already in the condition. Wow. And where you are now, today, is there also something that's helping you in the mental health department? Or?
yes, what I do is I see a therapist who specializes in treating people with various forms of muscular dystrophy, and I do take medications for depression to help deal with, because all of this, what I'm dealing with, affects my mental health too, with how daunting it can be sometimes, and it's helpful to me. And then I also, because of the social aspect of it, as I mentioned the other time, I don't want to meet up for people with social anxiety.
Mm.
And I attend it on Zoom at this point on the weekends.
Nice.
And and that's been helpful too. So it's all a matter of chipping away at it in different ways.
Right. Which is also like
Yeah.
it takes a lot of planning,
A lot of planning.
and a lot of organization, day to day.
Because it's a rare issue, I have
Yeah.
to be kind of like my own advocate.
Yeah, and your own like secretary and your own,
Yes.
and then also just to move from point A to point B. I feel like this takes a lot of mental fortitude to
Yes.
always be present. That's why, are there ways that you feel like you're working with that sort of idea of like you kind of always have to be very present in your life? Just
Yeah, my mom jokingly says it's like running my own business.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The business of you.
Yeah.
No, and I think maybe people maybe it's something that isn't maybe talked about enough, like in society, that the amount of effort, mental, physical, to live in disability day to day, and also like the privilege of not having to plan so much, you know what I mean? To like just go down the street, or to move this way or that way, or to think about like if people are sick around you, like in seasons or during COVID, or where people have respiratory illnesses.
Yeah, I mean, I'll look like a germ freak, but it's based in reality, not like a dysfunctional issue mentally.
And you have to like
so-
calculate for.
Yeah, so if I see somebody, let's say in the gym, it's off, and I'll just leave.
Yeah. You just leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta go.
No, I don't need this.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Wow. And yeah, any thoughts you want to cover more of for this episode about sort of risks and understanding more what the risks are with this type of muscular dystrophy today, and
Yeah,
people
sure.
to learn?
Sure. I mean, I would say that this can be daunting, but if I deal with it in step by step and look at it like trying to get into the mindset of being accepting of it, makes it, and planning is a way to cope with it.
Like to have control, that you can
Yes.
take steps in like action.
And one of the things I've learned is, because I see specialists, is that I try to advocate for each person who treats each aspect of my condition, whether it's a ear, nose, and throat doctor, or pulmonologist, primary care doctor. I like them to communicate with each other. Because that's a big thing. Because I don't have someone who can organize things for me, I'm advised to keep everyone in the loop, so it's not like compartmentalized care.
Right. And like it's all on you who organizing it in your.
Well, I tell them, to talk to the primary doctor or the pulmonologist, and that way, and if they're in the same health network, it's easier for them to communicate and coordinate things.
Yeah.
And that has been a big thing, because seeing specialists who only deal with their specialty, they need to be aware of, let's say, pulmonary issues. So if I see a dentist who might want to use sedation
Oh.
instead of local anesthetic, I have
Right.
to let them know. And if they don't believe me, I tell them or they don't
Call
maybe-
this guy.
or they're not aware
Yeah.
of what it is, I'll have them talk to the pulmonologist.
And
then,
yeah.
and then they get it.
And do you feel like you have to referee this pretty constantly because there does seem to be a lot of blind spots in
Yes.
the medical industry, like for example, like a dentist who would give you.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. And is that sort of nerve-wracking though?
It's irritating, yeah. It's irritating, it makes me tense.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
what I try to do is I say, before I say something, I say, listen, I'd love to be thorough with this. That's who I am. So, if I go to the dentist and it's a procedure that requires sedation plus local anesthetic, I tell them, I can't breathe on my own being sedated. So, if there's a way to deal with this with just a local anesthetic, that's fine. And, you know, and they fudge a little bit and say, listen, the pulmonary function test I had shows I have 40% lung function. Then they get it. So,
Wow. That is like a small business.
yes.
Every time, everywhere. And that in itself, I feel like, is part of like the risks.
Yes.
Where you also have like the ignorance inside even medical professionals who might understand one thing, but they're not putting it together with other studies, other understandings. That's a lot. Maybe next time we can talk more about that, about the working with the medical system,
Yes.
advice maybe for people, things to understand. But this has been good. This has been a good, informative session for me. I don't know
Yes,
for you.
yes. It's been very good.
Yeah, any last thoughts?
Well, so we're going to talk about this topic more thoroughly next time and maybe something else. So thank you for joining us, and thanks for Alana. Join us again. And please comment below if you wish to, and like and subscribe. Thank you very much.